Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Turks and Caicos Islands, preserving our heritage and culture. We're here today with Leslie Hall-Fontanez.
Yes.
And Leslie is the daughter of Oliver Hall, and her family goes back third generation, I think, to Turks and Caicos. And so we're going to let her tell you her story and about her family, part of her family and who they are, and then I'll ask her some other questions. And so we welcome you once again. And we again, this program is dedicated to our young people of the Turks and Caicos Islands so that they may know that they have a history and a past. So those of us, we are here in New York, and many Turks and Caicos Islands came to New York. So we're going to let Leslie tell her story. Tell us a little bit about who you are first, and
Okay.
and tell your story. Okay.
Well, like you said, my name is Leslie. My maiden name is Hall, and my married name is Fontanez, and you are my cousin, Glen. Mm-hmm. I remember growing up with you in my grandparents, my grandmother's home. My grandmother's name was Verna Hall. And she said that her maiden name was Skippings.
That's right. It was, yeah.
And she came to this country as a teenager, as a matter of fact, with her grandmother, because her grandmother helped raise my father and my Uncle Carl. Mm-hmm. So they always lovingly talked about a Catherine Skippings, their great-grandmother.
Oh. And they were from Baxalina.
They were from
Grand Turk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Skippings, yeah.
My grandmother talks about how, as a little girl, how she was treated kindly by her grandmother, Catherine. Mm-hmm. And
what was Catherine's last name?
Skippings.
Skippings also, yeah,
mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so my grandfather, my grandmother's husband, his name was John Hall, and he's from the Blue Hills.
Okay.
And he was a very nice man. He was born in 1892, and he was a seaman.
Okay.
And he also was a cook. Mm-hmm. So he and his half-brother, whose last name was Williams, it's Eddie Williams' dad, mm-hmm.
They
They were cooks, I was told, by Uncle Carl in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm. For the people in Turks and Caicos, is Dr. Ed Williams.
Dr. Ed Williams.
Who moved down there but died in 2008.
Yes.
I actually did his funeral down there, yeah.
Yeah, and he supported me in different ways too. I really enjoyed Eddie. I call him affectionately Eddie because he's my cousin also.
He was a professor.
Yes, he was.
What was the school? It was Cheney State?
It was in Pennsylvania.
Yes. Cheney State, yeah, mm-hmm. University. Yeah.
That's correct. And so we were always curious about Turks and Caicos because as American kids, we never heard of Turks and Caicos. So when my grandparents were alive and they talked about Turks and Caicos and our cousins talked about, we said, where the heck is Turks and Caicos? And we would tease them. And my father would say that if you look at a map, you see a little dot, that's Turks and Caicos.
Dot.
Yes. And they would say, when you land in Turks and Caicos, don't walk too fast, you may pass it. They had a great sense of humor about it. And my grandmother would tell them, oh, keep quiet, you know. Mm-hmm. But she was proud of being from Turks and Caicos. She would, from time to time, go back and visit. Yeah. And so I had the privilege of going to Turks and Caicos back in 2006 or 2005. Mm-hmm. And I got to see my roots. I mean, I look just like them. Yeah. It's amazing. And what amazed me about the folks from Turks and Caicos, including other cousins by the name of Margaret and
is that Margaret Clark?
Margaret Clark.
Okay, and Mr. Peter Clark.
Yeah, Peter Clark
daughter, yeah.
was my grandmother's uncle.
Ah.
Peter Clark was my grandmother's uncle.
That's right.
And so I remember Uncle Peter also.
He lived up here.
Yes, he did.
Back and forth,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Always dress.
Yes,
to
I
kill.
was told, yeah.
Suits.
And he lived to be almost 100.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. He lived to be almost 100. So I'm happy I have those memories of family from Turks and Caicos to the point now that Turks and Caicos has become so famous.
It's on the map.
Oh, now it's on the map. And I was even teased by some friends when they heard Turks and Caicos, because no one ever heard of Turks and Caicos. And even my mom had to laugh when we heard about Turks and Caicos someplace, and they all looked at me like, you always talked about Turks and Caicos. So people would, when I would tell them that my roots were from Turks and Caicos on my mom's side, I would always be teased also.
No, your mom was from...
Her family's from Barbados.
Okay.
But both my parents
Not a bad place.
Yeah. So, a nice combination, Turks and Caicos and Bajans. So my grandmother was born in 1906.
Okay.
And he was born in 1892. And they met here.
Oh, they met here.
They met here. They didn't meet in Turks and Caicos.
Okay. Through that community.
Yeah.
That was here from Turks and Caicos.
Yeah, that's how they met. And that's funny, because even my mom's side, they met here too as teenagers. So I'm gathering that
Now, for those who are wondering, what is she talking about here?
New York, I'm sorry.
Brooklyn, right? Brooklyn, New York.
In Brooklyn, New York.
Or in Harlem.
Exactly. With my grandmother said that they came to Brooklyn from the Turks and Caicos side. Verna Hall, Verna Skippings Hall, and John Hall was my grandfather. And
quickly, so people will know down there, what were some of her? Who were some of her siblings?
Well, we talked about one was named Irene.
Irene Henschel.
Henschel, yep. Yeah. I got to talk to Irene's children when I went to visit Turks and Caicos back in 2005, 6. Yeah. And they told me how they got to see my grandmother before she passed away back in 80. My grandmother died in 87. 87, right. And they talked about how funny she was. She was an excellent cook. Yeah. Verna Hall. That's one thing about Turks and Caicos folks. They could cook.
She was a cook, and I think she was better than Mom's Mabley when it comes to telling jokes.
She had a sense of humor. Sometimes, and she also had different sayings. Like if I tell my husband sometimes if she was cooking and she didn't like the way fish was, if she felt that it wasn't fresh enough, if she bought kingfish, she would say that was kingfish's cousin. Or when she served us, she always served us. Both my grandparents, but my grandmother, whenever she cooked, she could make, Glenn, she could make a pot of rice, a chicken, codfish cakes, conch fritters, and we got one of them, sweet plantains, and then she'd tell us this was brown skin service, So she had a really good sense of humor. She was good to my sister and I. She would take us to boat trips. Yeah. I didn't know I was going with her someplace. My mom and dad would get my sister and I together, and my grandmother would take us on bus rides. Yeah, bus rides, and one time a little boat trip also in New York. So she was very attentive.
So she had how many children?
She had 2 children, my father and my Uncle Carl. She had other children that passed away. Okay. She told me altogether she would have had about 5. Oh, wow. But here in this country at the time, they weren't too kind to the Caribbean or black community when they gave birth. And she says she feels that she lost her other 3 children unnecessarily. Oh my goodness. That's what she told me. Wow. So I would have had a couple of other aunts. They were girls. Yeah.
So who was older, Carl or your father?
My father. My father was born in 1928. Oliver Hall. His name was Oliver Thomas Hubert Benjamin Alden Hall.
Good Lord.
I was like, who named him? And Uncle Carl was Carl Alexander Hall. So Uncle Carl was born in 1932, and my father was born in 1928.
Oh, so your father had I knew your father. Nice, tall, handsome man. Right. And, he was kind of jokey. I think Carl looked more like your grandmother. Yeah. But Oliver was, I guess he must have looked like his father.
Yeah, he was a handsome man. You don't realize that until you get older. He was, because that's your parents, But when I look at pictures of my father, he was a handsome man. And my grandmother was smart enough to she got piano lessons for this guy. For my father. And she also got him into Stuyvesant High School.
Okay, tell us a little bit about Stuyvesant High School so people know when we talk about it.
Stuyvesant is
back in those days, a black person? Oh my goodness.
Stuyvesant is till today. It's hard to get. till today it's hard for whites to get into Stuyvesant.
Exactly. It sits right on the Hudson River
That's
in Manhattan, Lower Manhattan.
That's right.
Very hard to get into.
Exactly.
But he got in.
He got in, and he orchestrated the school band in
Wow.
Stuyvesant High School.
Around what year did he get in?
He got in, he was born in 48, around 47, 40, yeah, he was about 16.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 16 when he got
Before I was
into
born.
Stuyvesant. Yeah. And he was a fantastic pianist.
Uh-huh.
And he started playing the piano at about 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And then Uncle Carl said that it never stopped. He started writing music when he was around 10.
Wow.
Because I found his music at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. after his death.
Tell us a little bit about some of that music and who sang it.
Well, my dad, he was trying to make it in the industry, which was very difficult back then. He was from the era of Quincy Jones, Nat King Cole, those guys. Max Roach, who was one of the top drummers.
Jazz,
yeah. But his genre was everything. He wrote calypso, he wrote classical, and he wrote some pop. But he wanted to. He didn't want to be commercial. He said, but
he did go commercial. Right?
He had to eat.
What are some of the famous songs that he wrote?
He did write "Revenge" for Brooke Benton.
Revenge, that's right.
And he wrote for Clyde McPhatter.
Clyde McPhatter and the young people don't know
They're gonna say, who the heck is Clyde McPhatter?
The Platters, right?
The Platters also,
Platters,
yeah. And he wrote for another guy that did commercials. I can't think of his name right now. Going to a moment. But he wrote commercials. Yeah. He wrote classical pieces. He wrote plays and he was just. I always was hearing his music, and
sounds like he was a genius.
He was. Yeah. He also, like I said, he orchestrated his school band in Stuyvesant High School.
Wow.
When he was 16, 17 years old, and then, like I said earlier, he had a teacher. He talked about, his name was Professor Johnson, I think. I wrote it. I have it. Oh, I have it right here. As a matter of fact, I wrote down that he wrote for Brooke Benton, Clyde McFadden, the Platters, and the Clusters. Yeah, and that he also knew big names with Nat Cole, Ray Charles, Max Roach, John Hendricks, and Quincy Jones. They all came up around the same time.
Yeah. A son of the soil of Turks and Caicos.
Yep. Exactly.
Wow.
Got to go into one of the top schools in New York till today.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my parents met by him. They both were pianists.
Oh.
And so my mom said when she met him, he played one of her pieces. And my grandmother was impressed because she was a pianist.
So from Barbados, there's Hazel Scott, right?
Oh, I forgot Hazel Scott was from Barbados.
Yeah. One of the best jazz pianists that you can ever find.
Yeah.
So must be something in the water over there.
I'm telling you, yeah. And Uncle Carl was a tap dancer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
we're gonna get to Carl. Let's get to Carl.
All right,
Let's continue with your father and your mother too.
Yeah.
So your mother, what was her genre?
Classical music.
Piano.
And so she said she was playing. They lived on McDonough Street in Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy, which now it's become gentrified. So, but my grandparents bought a home on McDonough Street in Bed-Stuy, and my mom was playing fleur de lis.
Wow.
And so my father was walking down the street with a friend of his named Pat, who was a saxophonist. And he goes, "Man, I'm gonna ring that bell because that cat sounds good." And Pat,
the cat meaning your mother.
My mother. That's the expression, guys, that they used in the 40s, you know. Yeah. And Pat says, "Man, you can't ring the bell. You don't know who that is." And he rang the bell. And my Uncle Kenny, my mom's brother, said, when my father asked, "Who's that cat playing the piano?" My uncle told him, "That's my sister. That's no cat. That's no guy." And he met my mom, and I grew up with both my parents playing beautifully in that home. My sister and I just grew up with constant music playing in the house till today.
Did any of it rub off on you?
I love music. I did take piano lessons for a little bit, but I got lazy with it. And I took it for granted, but I love music. Yeah. I have an ear for music. I know what I like. I can tell junk when I don't care for it. Because my parents were very critical. It got us. They were both piano teachers too. In the end, my father taught theory, and my mother taught piano.
Wow.
And so my father and my mom always got us to appreciate the background of things.
Yeah.
So whenever we see a movie and we hear a composition or we hear a theme song, my parents would even tear that apart and talk about how pretty that was, or they would talk about the bridge of a song of music, or they always. They make my sister and I very attuned.
That's culture.
To the music.
You really brought up in great culture, and music is a good thing to break into that area. Yeah. So, who are some of the other Turks and Caicos Islanders that your grandmother Verna would hang out with? We went to lots of parties. Yeah, she did, and I mentioned my cousin Eleanor and her sister Margaret. Okay. Susan Williams.
Oh yes,
that's Eddie's mother. Okay, right down the hall. Yeah.
No, that's Eddie's sister.
No, that's they were both named Susan.
Oh wow!
Susan, his mother was. That's a craziness.
Oh my goodness!
And we're finding that the people, especially in Turks and Caicos, they would name their children exactly after. For example, my great grandfather was Nathaniel Bertram Misick. Okay. Okay. But so was my grandfather. Okay. But we call him Parnett. And so as I did my research, I had to put him down, building my family tree, as Junior. Because they didn't even use Junior. They would take nicknames. Right. And so with Susan, Susan Crum you're talking about, who owns, who also just passed last year. But her mother was a Misick. Number one, okay. She was Susan Misick. She, for those people down there, her mother was the aunt of Miss Irene Cadet. In terms of what did you see in terms of community?
Family, we were always. That's how I know you. We were always together. Yeah. You know that at least a couple of times a year we would get together at my grandmother's house and she'd cook for us. We'd get together. And I think that's so important. I'm happy because I'm happy that you're here with me now. Yeah. The other cousins that unfortunately have passed away, that I recall being with, and I'm happy.
Your
that
sister?
My sister died. My sister, Valerie. We talk about our roots all the time. We always talked about it and how we're appreciative of the fact that we grew up together. We know who we are.
In this big New York with about 8 million people. Yeah. From these little islands.
And she talked about, she also, I asked you earlier, do you remember the Bushels?
Oh yes.
They were from Turks and Caicos.
New York.
Yeah, they were from Turks and Caicos. Yeah. Because when when she...
Helen, what
was her first name? I can't remember. When she passed, she died tragically. My grandmother was devastated. Wow. She got her dress caught in a taxi in New York, and they dragged her. And that was my grandmother's best friend, and she was from Turks Island also. They always talk about how they swam to this country. They swam here. That's how they came here. They always talk about how they swam here, but of course they came through Ellis Island.
Yes.
And ancestry. A young man did do my ancestry for me, and he did have John Hall. As my father, my grandfather was a superintendent. Okay. In here in New York, in Flatbush section of Brooklyn, and my grandmother as a domestic, and they had my father's name Oliver Hall as one child. Oh. And he was a year and a half. Yeah. So I got a kick out of that.
So that's around 1929.
Like 29. That I did see that, and I don't know what I did with those papers, but I was thrilled.
If you go to familysearch.org, you can find you can bring up a lot of even the ships that they came on.
Oh, okay.
And the ports that they left. Right. A lot of times they would sometimes go to the Dominican Republic. Right. And then get on a ship and come straight to New York.
Which we have family from the Dominican Republic, because I remember we have cousins that didn't speak English, but we were still family, and I always got a kick out of the fact that I had cousins that didn't speak English that well.
Remember Miss Helen, what's her name? She hung out with the Bush. She was family to the Bushels too. Right, exactly. But it's we had a great community here.
Yeah, we did.
We had a great community, and then we would hook up with. They had the Turks and Caicos Islands Association
Right.
back then that brought them together. Also, not when I came here, I used to go to it,
Right.
but I would literally watch those people just die out. You know, and it was sad.
It is.
But they left us a good legacy.
Absolutely.
They left us a good legacy, and that's part of what I'm trying to do
Right.
with rehearsing with this documentary, because I heard stories that that they would tell from back in Turks and Caicos,
Right.
and they love to sit and play bid whiz.
Yeah. And they always, and when they went to a party, they always took food with them.
Codfish cakes.
Always had to take codfish. My grandmother would take codfish with her everywhere she went. Oh, conch fritters.
Yeah, conch fritters, that's right.
She would make conch fritters, and when I got to go to Turks and Caicos and I took my husband, we met up with the Henschels and they made it for me. They
Yeah.
made cracked conch and conch fritters. And
That must have been Mara's Henschel.
It was wonderful. Because I miss my grandmother making that.
Yeah.
Things we take for granted. Those of you who are in Turks and Caicos, living here in New York and having that, I loved having my grandmother make it, and there was a certain smell in her home when she cooked.
That's right.
And when we would be together, we just had a good time.
That's good.
And
That's good.
I'm glad we had that, Glenn.
Good old days. Yeah, that was great. So your father passed, and but he left a great legacy.
He left he left a catalog of music.
Catalog music, which you said is in the Library of Congress.
And I had I signed my name. I met up with some folks that told me, I met up with a lawyer that told me to put my name on everything pertaining to my father.
Because you inherited that.
Exactly.
That, right?
And so I took one of his songs and made it into a children's book.
You have that book?
I have it right here. He wrote this song for my sister and I when we were kids.
Okay. You want to show it?
The name of this book is the name of the song was "The Ragdoll That Cried Real Tears," and so.
So you're an author? Yeah, I remember.
Yes, I
the book out.
am. Yeah. And this picture is of my sister Valerie.
Oh, that's Valerie. Yeah,
It's Valerie. And then even the characters inside the book are my parents and some friends' children.
Where can they get that book? On Amazon?
They can get the book on Amazon. It keeps popping up. I do need to. I have
A new edition?
not only a new edition, but I do have a sequel to this, and I haven't really done anything with it, which I should.
So tell them the name of the book and the author.
The name of the book is The Ragdoll That Cried Real Tears, and the author is me, Leslie Hall-Fontanez.
Okay.
It's my first husband.
Okay.
And but it's an excellent read, and then in the back of the book is the song that my father wrote, which I knew by heart.
Is that Revenge or?
No. This is The Ragdoll That Cried Real Tears.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, he wrote this back in 1962. He wrote this for Valerie and I. And so if you're a pianist or if you play any instrument, guitar or a saxophone, you'll be able to play the song. And it's a beautiful song. It's a beautiful, beautiful song.
So nice.
So, yeah, growing up in a musical home, fortunately, I took them for granted.
Yeah.
But
Well, you did good. You did good.
Yeah.
So let's go to your uncle.
Okay,
Carl.
Uncle Carl.
Okay.
So Uncle Carl was my dad's brother, and they loved each other. Uncle Carl. My father also was a computer. He also worked for IBM. He was one of the first blacks to go into IBM in the 50s. Uncle Carl went to RCA to take up radio and television, and he worked for CBS Radio and Television for over 40 years.
CBS
Television.
Yeah.
And he did sound effects. And this is, I have a picture here of my uncle and a picture of my parents. I didn't even show them. I should show pictures of my Uncle Carl. Well, this is Uncle Carl at CBS receiving an Emmy.
Whoa, let me zoom in on that.
Okay.
I'm going to drop it down.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
So that's the little short guy there on the right.
I think you can figure out that. As a matter of fact, when I was looking at pictures of the Misicks and you guys, you all look alike. So we're definitely related.
Yeah. So let me bring in my wife for just 1 minute. So tell us. Yeah.
Carl got involved with us at the church, when I found out that he was an Emmy Award winning sound effect person, I asked him if he would help the children in our church with their Easter pageant. And he created sound effects for the Easter pageant, and it just turned the pageant into a totally different production altogether. An example is that when we talked about the stone being rolled away during the resurrection, he made the sound effect of the stone being rolled away. When they talked about the crucifixion of Jesus, he created the sound of the nails being hammered into his hands. When it talked about the wind blowing during the time that he was on the cross, Carl created the sound effects for all of that. And so it just changed the entire meaning of the pageant.
You can see why Uncle Carl got an Emmy.
That's right. It was absolutely amazing.
Okay.
Yeah.
They were brilliant. They were brilliant guys.
They were.
My father and Uncle.
Yes.
And Uncle
you.
Carl was also a tap dancer.
A tap
My
dance.
mother tells a story of how my father and him worked. They had a show in Carnegie Hall. And very nice. And it was, my mother said it was hysterical. That she said the curtain was coming down and you could see Uncle Carl tap dancing, and as the curtain was going further and further down, Carnegie Hall is a big venue here in New York.
Oh yeah.
And
in the world.
In the world. And he was tap dancing. My mother said the curtain was in. You could still see Carl's feet moving. Even when it was down to the toes and the heel of the shoes, Carl's feet were still going. And my mom said they just had a ball with that. So she tells that story about Uncle Carl.
That is wonderful. And Carl did not forget his parents' home, right?
No, not at all.
He went back and he invested.
He did,
Yeah.
He talked about it. He's very proud of having his roots being from Turks and Caicos.
Yeah.
And
That's
so,
really great.
Yeah.
And so how many Emmys did he win at CBS?
He won about 5.
5.
About
Wow.
5 or 6 Emmys. I found.
What shows?
There were, one was with the Joan Rivers show. One was Guiding
Rivers.
Light. Yeah, okay. Guiding Light. He got about 3 from Guiding Light. He did sound effects for the Joan Rivers show, and he got an Emmy, I found. And a couple of them unfortunately got messed up. But.
Oh, this has been great, and I really appreciate it. I've been coming. It's been a long time coming.
Right. I'm glad we finally
we went through COVID and all that. And
yes.
I said I was going to stop, but it's good being here with you and your husband David now too. Who I know he's doing some renovation. I'm not going to call you on camera if you want to. Come on, you want to come and sit with us? Come on, David. Come on. Yeah. So.
Yes,
and you guys have a beautiful house here in Brooklyn, beautiful brownstone, and you're renovating them now, right?
Yes.
So David, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then about this young lady who looks like she could be a daughter. But that's what a grade does to us, right? All right. Tell us a little bit about yourself, David.
My name is David Fontanez. I was born here and bred here in Brooklyn, but my parents are from Puerto Rico.
Okay, not too far from Turks and Caicos.
No, not at all. Leslie and I know each other for over 40 years. We've been married for over 15 years married, and we're still having ball together. We just came back from a trip to Greece.
Wow.
Did a cruise.
Your parents?
So my siblings were born in Puerto Rico. I'm the only one that was born here.
Okay.
So my brother's 6 years, my sister's 5 years older than me, so in between.
Okay.
In between those 5 years. So I was born in 55, so they probably came here around 50, 52, around there.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, and he got to go to Turks and Caicos.
Oh, you did?
And he thoroughly enjoyed it.
I was there eating those
conch fritters and crack conch.
Yeah.
Because I always told him about it. And when we went, first of all, glad I have to tell you this, when we went, Uncle Carl told me who to look for.
Let me get the experience. So we got to Turks and Caicos, and we're in this big real giant souvenir store, real big store.
Okay.
So she goes one way, I go the other way.
Yeah.
We're in this huge store, this huge souvenir
That's the
store.
ship dock.
And I see her walking towards me with somebody. And as they got closer, it was a much younger guy, much younger kid. As they got closer, the kid looked just like her. I mean, the face was identical. And I said, that's family. I just knew.
Welcome home, right?
Yeah.
It was amazing. It was amazing.
It was a cousin.
Yeah.
She was looking for other cousins, the one who did the
Conch
she
fritters
was
and
for
crackers.
that, for that cousin,
Yeah.
for that family.
Yeah.
So somebody directed her to
A young guy.
militant, was it, or what?
No,
A hall?
A hall. Yeah.
Hall, yeah.
Somebody
Hall.
in the store directed her to a hall,
Okay.
and she walked back with him, and
And we looked just alike.
I think
Oh boy. Yeah.
And what was so nice about what my cousin Henschel did, I can't think of his.
Greg was not Gregory. You know that cousin was it Mara's son?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so
Morris's son.
Morris was married to my first cousin,
Okay.
Elena Henschel.
Okay.
So I know who you're talking
It
about.
was his son that was kind enough. We met his wife at the dock. So she had a massage business that she did.
Yeah.
So I did the massage with her, and my girlfriend came with her husband, and she called him and said, "Can you please make them some conch fritters and cracked conch?"
Wow.
So he says, "Okay, come to such and such a place area in 2 hours, and I'll have it for you." So we went and we did the massage, and then we took a cab and we met up with him, and he had it done for us.
Wow.
And what a treat! And my girlfriend and her husband could not get over it. And we saved ours to take it back on the ship to
okay.
drink it with a bottle of champagne. We had a prosecco. But they couldn't wait. They ate it as they were walking along.
they made a mistake. They tasted
They
it.
tasted it, and once they tasted it,
Once you taste it, right, you can't
it
forget
was
it.
fantastic.
That's
So
great.
he got to see my roots.
I know you're from Puerto Rico, but how you like those lovely beaches? In the Grand Turks and Caicos.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It was a nice trip. It was a nice trip. And we always talk about going. We wanted to go back with Uncle Carl, but he declined.
Yeah.
He declined quickly.
Yeah. Then Carl passed just last year,
2022.
2022, 2 years ago.
2022.
December.
In
Yeah.
December
December,
3rd.
Yeah. Year and a half.
Yeah, Carl and Susan Crum, who was his first cousin.
She died
She
August.
died in August, and he died in
In December.
December. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as I say, Ed died down there in Provo. They moved. These are people that went back and invested.
Exactly.
Ed had a house in Chalk Sound, a very nice place down there in Providenciales. And so, but yeah, I admire those old people.
And you know what? When I went to Turks and Caicos the first time, Eddie picked me up from the airport. And we sat down and we talked at the airport to eat, and everybody knew him. Everybody knew him at the airport. Hi. They're talking to him. And I had a song that my father wrote. And the name of the song was called My Lovely Suzette, or My Suzette. And I figured Suzette has to be somebody in the family or something. And I asked Eddie, I have the song, and he said that Suzette is a cousin.
That's Miss Irene Cadet's sister. Okay,
Oh.
for people down there who don't know.
Well, he wrote a
Suzette,
song
yeah.
about it that I have, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I mean, he was some prolific writer.
Yep, he was. He
He
really
was
was.
somewhere.
And I hope that our young people will begin to look at these and get an example of people who didn't just come here and sit down,
Right.
but they did something that became productive, and you know, and not only help the Turks and Caicos and then Puerto Rico, but also the whole
Also
United
around the
States and the
island.
world,
Right.
because the world is global now. But anyway, I want to thank you guys and for inviting me to your beautiful home. I know you're doing some renovation. I'm going to come back when it's all finished.
Okay,
and,
definitely.
and you know, I've taken some photos already,
Right.
and to see it. And thank you, and we'd like to wish. Let me just come over there and just sign out. No, you stay there. You stay there. You stay there. You'll fit in. I can edit.
Okay. This was great.
Merci.
I'm glad we
Yeah.
did this. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for watching, and Turks and Caicos preserving our heritage and culture. May God bless you, and we We thank Leslie Hall and David, Leslie Hall-Fontanez and her husband, wonderful husband, David Fontanez, and my lovely wife, Dr. Jennifer Misick. My name is Dr. Glen Misick. Thank you for watching, and may God bless you.
Bye.